Coming to you live from the Billy C Studios in Lake George, New York. I'm Bill Kavaliauskas. It's time for the Billy C Show. Good morning, good day, good evening, whenever you're watching, whenever you're listening. I hope you're doing okay today. Today's show is being brought to us in part by Sal's Neighborhood Pizzeria and Italian Restaurant located on beautiful St. Simon's Island in Georgia. Check out the website, salsneighborhoodpizzeria.com, or give my man a call, 912-268-2328, 912-268-2328. Find out why I go all the way to St. Simon's for an authentic Italian meal. And guess what? I'm going to be going down there sooner than I thought because Sal owes me dinner. That's right. We had a little wager on the Anthony Joshua Andy Ruiz Jr. contest, so I'm going to start fasting and get ready to go down there and make a pig of myself at Sal's. So you should join us. Sit at my table. We'll make Sal pay for your dinner, too. Today's show is also brought to us in part by the Title Bout Championship computer game. Check out our website, www.billycboxing.com, and get yourself a copy of the Title Bout Championship computer game. It's a great game. It's not, as graphical oriented as some of the new games are. But what this game does is it gives you the ability to put some of your favorite fighters against each other and, make weight changes if you want. Are they in their peak, et cetera, and see how the computer would generate the fight. They go round by round. You could put a Rocky Marciano up against a Deontay Wilder or something like that. It's a great game. Get yourself a copy. Make sure you mention Billy C. Today's show is also being brought to us in part by our 24-hour, 7-day-a-week boxing channel. It's on all the major streaming platforms like Roku, etc. Just go to GinicoUSA.com. Sign up today for free. That's Ginico, GINIKO, USA.com. And sign up right now. And check it out, man. We got some great stuff up there. Not only do we replay these shows, but we have all of the specials we've done over the years. The Boxing Revisited TV series that Sal and I did, all those episodes are up. A lot of live events we did are up there. Some early stuff that Dax and Alex and myself did. We actually filmed them in a hotel room. You got to check it out, man. Check it out. There's a lot of good stuff. We've been doing this for 15 years, and it's fun to watch 24/7. Just go there different times. Don't go there at the same time. You watch the same thing. The programming. I got to update the programming. We put new stuff up there all the time. So check it out. Today's show is also being brought to us in part by my favorite barbecue rub, Kenny Bears. Hey, listen, I put this stuff on everything. It was designed by my man Kenny himself to put on like pork, when you're doing a pork butt or something in a smoker. But lo and behold, I put it on pizza. I put it on my burgers on the grill. It's great stuff. Go to gourmetspice.com and get yourself a bottle right now. Make sure you tell them Billy C sent you, or just click the link on our website. And finally, today's show is being brought to us in part by my book, Tom Molino, From Bondage to Baddest Men on the Planet, is available right now where all good books are sold. You can get a copy right now while you're watching or listening to this very show. Just visit barnesandnoble.com or amazon.com. Find out why I'm so adamant about getting Tom Molino's story told. If you want a signed copy, drop me an email, billy@talkinboxing, TALKINBOXING.com, or just visit the website and click the link. You still got time. You still got time to stuff the stocking with it, because, we designed this book specifically so it would fit in a stocking. See, you fold it, stick it right in. Get yourself a copy. All right. We'll be chatting with my man Sal and Dax and Alex and Emily, who was live at the Terence Crawford Kavaliauskas fight last night at Madison Square Garden. All the great shots you see around the internet were taken by my girl Emily Harney. So we'll get her thoughts a little later. First and foremost, in case you missed it, Terence Crawford stopped Kavaliauskas in the 9th round. The official time was 44 seconds of the ninth round to improve to 36-0, with 27 of his wins coming by knockout. And Mean Machine Kavaliauskas loses the first time in his career, 21 wins, 1 loss, 1 draw, 17 of his wins coming by knockout. It was an exciting fight. Kavaliauskas was no easy opponent. I started getting some, and we're going to read some of the emails later, but, I was getting some flack over Kavaliauskas and people saying about Crawford and everything else. Let me just tell you something about Kavaliauskas. Just because you may never have heard of him doesn't mean he wasn't a quality fighter. This was a real fighter. If you look at his resume, and when I break down these fights, obviously we didn't do a pre-fight on this one, but when I break down these fights, I look carefully at the level of opposition that he fought. And if you look at this guy, you can see a trend with all of his fights going back to 2016. Actually, 2017 is when he really starts kicking it up. He fought a lot of these top 10 guys that other fighters avoid. And he was a lot better than people thought. And he showed it last night in New York, because he gave Crawford a hard time, even though Terence didn't say that he was hurt and he was trying to, give the fans a show. Listen, whenever a fighter tells you that, and I love Terence Crawford. You guys know he's one of my top guys. As a matter of fact, I think he's tied for number one pound for pound with Vasily Lomachenko, and you could actually even throw in Canelo Alvarez in that mix. I mean, theoretically, you could mix those top three in anywhere in 1, 2, or 3, and you wouldn't get an argument from me. But he says, yeah, I was trying to give you guys an entertaining fight. And I'm saying, you know what? The only trainers or fighters that ever really do that pussyfoot around, so to speak, in a fight to let it go rounds, or you hear sometimes a trainer will say, oh, yeah, we wanted this fight to go rounds. We wanted so-and-so to get some rounds. That's BS. Because you don't want to screw around. You want to go in there and take care of business. Yes, some fighters like Terence Crawford like to break down their opponent. Fine. That's different than, I wanted to entertain you guys, so I decided to take a few hard shots. No, that's not what happens. But in any event, I thought it was a great performance by Terence Crawford. It was a typical Terence Crawford performance, to be honest with you. I mean, that's what he does. He can mix it up from the right side or the left side, orthodox or southpaw, if you will. But this guy does it, man. He breaks down his opponents. He's extremely accurate. He's fast. They're saying, Kavaliauskas, he's fighting a good game plan. Yeah, because he's a good fighter. I mean, he was patient. He didn't rush in there. And, Crawford did what he had to do. You can make an argument that, in the second round that Crawford went down. I don't know, because of the knee. It was ruled a slip. I think it could have gone either way, but I agree with Terence Crawford. I didn't think he was really hurt. I mean, Andre, Andre. I don't know about you, man, but that drives me insane. I mean, Andre Ward was Andre Ward, and they say it every time. Hey, Dre, it's like, hey, we're talking to you, Andre. Oh, Dre. Yeah, I disagree with some of the stuff he says, but I will say this. He and Timothy Bradley, along with Joe Tessitore, what a solid crew for Top Rank. You got to give him credit there. Also on that card, Teofimo Lopez proved that he's for real. He improved to 15-0 with 12 knockouts when he knocked out Richard Comey, who was the champion, the IBF lightweight champ, at 1 minute and 13 seconds of the second round. What a shot. Ba-boom. And Comey went down. I don't disagree with the stoppage. He was in trouble. He clearly was in trouble. And Teofimo Lopez, with that victory, he's an exciting fighter. You love him. There's only one problem. The lightweight division is kind of controlled right now by the WBA, WBC, and WBO world champion, some guy named Vasily Lomachenko. So Teofimo Lopez seemingly will be fighting Lomachenko sometime in April. Interesting fight. Lopez is a young fighter. He's got extremely fast hands. We obviously have seen the punching power by him. But he has to step in the ring with Lomachenko, who's, pound for pound, top fighter in the world. But he's aging. It's going to be, I like the fight. I'm looking forward to it. And also on that card, Michael Conlon, improved to 13-0 with 7 knockouts when he won a unanimous decision over Vladimir Nikitin, who drops his first fight. He's 3-1. The thing is these highly decorated fighters, highly decorated in the amateurs, you put an asterisk next to it. It's not like Conlon fought your typical 3-0 fighter. He was fighting a very good 3-0 fighter, similar to himself, with a amateur pedigree. The way the judges saw it, the closest judge had it 98-92. The second had it 99-91. The final judge had it a blowout 100-90, all in favor of Conlon. So back to the Terence Crawford fight. People are always criticizing him for not fighting, the top fighters in the welterweight division. But what is he supposed to do? I mean, if they don't want to fight him, you can't force fighters to fight. You really can't. And for the most part, I think that he's there. I mean, I think he's arguably the top welterweight in the world today. I honestly believe so. You look at the landscape of the welterweight division. Errol Spence, who is a champion of the IBF and WBC, and then you have the WBO champion, who's Terence Crawford, and then you have the WBA, who has 97 champions. Manny Pacquiao is one of them. Who does Terence Crawford fight? He's got to fight any one of those guys, any one of the 97 WBA world champs in that division, or he could fight Errol Spence. Rumor has it Errol Spence may not be fighting again. That injury from the accident was a little more serious than people think. I saw some photos of him, and he didn't look. He looked like something was off. Maybe it's just going to take a while, but I'm expecting not to see the same Errol Spence back in the ring. But that's the fight we all want to see: Errol Spence against Crawford. Who's preventing that fight? Well, listen. When I look at the landscape of boxing today, I see Matchroom Sport Hearns. I see Golden Boy Promotions, and I see Top Rank, all willing to fight each other on cross networks, etc., etc. The only one that's seemingly trying to continue, basically with division of the sport of boxing is the PBC. You look at their fighters, with the exception of Andy Ruiz Jr., who they didn't think was going to beat Anthony Joshua. They let him go fight Anthony Joshua. But all the other champions fight other PBC fighters. That's great for Al Heyman and the PBC. They got a bunch of sucker fans following them, and they think that like guys like the Charlo brothers are quality fighters. I mean, who have they fought? I think if the PBC, as we're looking at 2020 right around the corner, if the PBC can just step it up and put the big boy pants on as a unit and start to fight the other promotional fighters, a la Matchroom and Top Rank and Golden Boy, man, would we have some great fights. We would have some great fights, great fights. But it's up to them. And you can't blame Terence Crawford for not fighting other fighters with other promotional firms when they don't want to fight him. And speaking of Terence Crawford, I've about had it with everybody saying that he doesn't fight anybody. You guys got to go back and look at the whole thing with Terence Crawford. All right? You got to go all the way back to 2013. Now, don't take your socks and shoes off. I'll just help you, okay? It was 6 years ago, all right? And, he was brought in to fight Breidis Prescott. And that fight was in Las Vegas. And, the powers that be were trying to get Breidis Prescott a win at the time. This is a guy that there was a lot of fanfare about. He had beaten Amir Khan, et cetera, and they figured, well, this guy Terence Crawford from Nebraska, who's he fighting, in Nebraska? And he was undefeated, and they bring him in. Clearly, Terence Crawford was the B-side. And what does he do? He wins a decision over Prescott. His next fight, same thing. They make him go to Dallas, and he fought Alejandro Sanabria. Again, he was the B-side, and it was for an NABO lightweight title. This is when he was still fighting in the lightweight, and he beats him, knocks him out. Then he goes and again against Andrei Kilimov, B-side, for the world title, and he wins that fight, a decision. Ricky Burns, he had to go over to Glasgow in Scotland, and he was the B-side fighter. Again, he wins that fight. He goes in with Kavaliauskas Gamboa, and this time, you could make an argument that he was a B fighter, and they had it in Omaha, Nebraska, because they knew that they could make some money with that. He beats him. And then they realize, wait a minute, maybe we got something here. And they give him Raimundo Beltran, who's a tough fighter, beats him. Thomas Delorme beats him. Derry Jean, okay. Derry Jean had a really good record at the time when he fought him, but I knew that this was a mismatch, and he beats him. Hammer and Hank Lundy was a who knows kind of a fighter. You never know what happens with him, and he beat him. He takes on Victor Postal, who was a top lightweight at the time. He beats him. John Molina, okay, one-dimensional fighter, but a tough guy, knocks him out. Felix Diaz beats him, right? Then he moves up, unifies the title against Ndongo, Julius Ndongo, who was knocking people out, becomes a welterweight, fights Jeff Horn, who beat Manny Pacquiao, knocks him out, takes on a much bigger Jose Benavidez Jr., knocks him out. In his last fight, before last night, takes on and knocks out Amir Khan, named fighter, still dangerous opponent, and then he fought Kavaliauskas. Listen, anybody that says that he doesn't have a good resume doesn't know the sport of boxing. I'm sorry. This guy has it all. He breaks his opponents down. He goes in for the kill. He's an exciting fighter. I don't know how people don't like him. I really, it shocks me. Negativity that's around him. He's stuck in this. I don't think he's stuck in anybody. I think he who's available to him. I think he fights that are willing to fight him. The truth of the matter is that Terence Crawford, in my opinion, he's the guy that's being ducked. He's not ducking anybody. You could see it in him. The kind of guy that he is last night. Kavaliauskas was not an easy opponent for him. He was an unknown opponent. And I think that that's what the issue was with a lot of people giving him, not cutting him any slack about, who's he fighting? Is he fighting this Kavaliauskas guy? Well, who is he? We found out last night he was a pretty good fighter. He just had the unfortunate task of stepping in with a pound-for-pound fighter. And speaking of pound-for-pound, a guy who's pound-for-pound number one in my book, Sal Rocky Senecola, joins us right now. Good morning, Sal.
Good morning, Billy C. What a great night of fights.
I thought so. And I was just talking about Crawford. You know what? People give him a hard time, but this Kavaliauskas guy was a tough cat. What did you think of the fight?
I love the fight, and definitely the Kavaliauskas. I can't say the name. He won me over as a fan. He's my type of fighter. You know that. He comes forward. He's looking to land the big punches, and that was a knockdown. He knocked Crawford down. I don't care what the judges say. They didn't give him the knockdown, but he did knock him down. And I'll tell you what, though, Crawford just proved to be who he is. I mean, he zones in, and he can get caught with some punches. But I'll tell you, in the end, he's a hell of a finisher, Billy. I'll tell you what, he's devastating when he wants to. When he has you hurt, he's going to finish you.
There's no question about it. And Kavaliauskas, who I kept thinking last night. Every time they mention his name, I thought of John Muskiunas. John is a Lithuanian descent as well, and Kavaliauskas is a Lithuanian fighter. And before I met John, I didn't know much about Lithuania and the type of people that are from there. But I do know one thing after watching last night: they could produce some good fighters because Kavaliauskas, I thought, was a quality fighter. I'll admit, I didn't know much about him, but during my research on this fight, I found that, when you look at his record, Sal, and I was saying this a few moments ago, he fought a whole collection of fighters that other fighters avoid. Like you and I have talked many times on and off the air about when a young fighter's being brought up and the types of fighters they put him in with. They put him in with easy win fights, not the tough guys that they should be tested against. And when I started researching Kavaliauskas' record, that's the kind of fighters he fought for most of his career.
Yes, and that's a big point. I had the fight even in the 6th round, and ultimately before the knockout, I had Terence Crawford ahead 77-74. But I'll tell you, it was a good competitive fight, and I liked it because he was always in the mix, and you sensed he's got the power to end the fight. But unfortunately, it didn't turn out that way for him, and Terence Crawford proved to be one of the best fighters pound for pound today, and as he knows how to finish off a fighter. So it was a very good fight. I thought the first fight I saw was the Carlin and the Sladonian or whatever. What is his name?
The Russian fighter Vladimir Nikitin.
Nikitin, yes. And I had that. Actually, I had it as a draw, 95-95. It was a good fight, I thought. And then you look at Richard Comey versus Lopez. I'm an instant fan of Lopez. I'll tell you, what a solid right hand. He almost took his head off in that 2nd round.
Teofimo Lopez is a fighter that definitely is there. I mean, 15-0, 12 knockouts now. Comey was nothing to take lightly. Seemed like Comey was in there with not a care in the world until he found himself in serious trouble with that first knockdown in the 2nd round. Here's the only problem about Lopez, Sal. That performance and picking up that belt, now he has to step in with Vasily Lomachenko early 2020 because Lomachenko has the other 3 major belts, and we all heard Vasily say many times that he wants to unify the division. So I don't know how he would fare against Lomachenko. He does bring power, he does bring speed, but is that enough for a guy like Lomachenko?
I'll tell you what, that is going to be one of the fights I do not want to miss because that's going to be a hell of a fight, I think. And, Lomachenko is so elusive. He defines the art of boxing. And Lopez, he could get lucky with that, get him in the wheelhouse, man. One shot to the body and another one overhand right to the head. You never know. But, again, I think Lomachenko is a masterful, artful, as you and I have often said, he defines the term of boxing, to hit and not get hit, and not doing it in a Mayweather fashion, but do it in a position where when you're when you're avoiding their punches, you're in position to strike at any time. So I think that's going to be a very, very good fight, and I can't wait to see that one.
The funny thing about that fight, Sal, is it's a classic youth versus age. We look at Lomachenko as a fighter, how great he is, and I agree with your analogy of him. I mean, he's He's what can you say? He does it all. He breaks his fighters down. He moves well. He's there. He's right in front of you, 2 feet away, and you can't hit the guy, and he's tattooing you. But he's not a young fighter. And
No.
Although he hasn't been beat up ever, at least any fight I ever saw, maybe some of the 300 and some odd fights that he had in the amateurs, maybe he took some shots in some of those. But he's going to be up against a young fighter. Lopez has taken some shots, but, it's tough to beat youth. You know that. And it ought to be an interesting fight. I know it's 4 months away at least, but I'm looking forward to that fight for 2020. I hope it materializes because it's going to be a good one.
Oh, it's going to be a very good one. I'll look forward to that as well. And I'll tell you, I'm a big fan of Lopez, and I love Lomachenko, but I'd like to see a good mix and see how they try to figure each other out and see who wins. That's it. That's what I always say, the best man win. May the best man win. And,
getting back to Crawford just for a second, what I love about this guy, and, he does it a lot, and actually he does it in every one of his fights. He breaks down his opponents. He's not a kind of a fighter like, you watch a guy like AJ or Deontay Wilder or when Klitschko was fighting, and I'm mentioning heavyweights because most people know all the heavyweights, or even a Lomachenko. They seemingly win every round sometimes, most of the time.
Yeah.
Well, not so much Deontay, but definitely Vladimir and Lomachenko. They win every round. And, they get judged by it. With Terence Crawford, he doesn't, he looks at a fight as what it is. It's a 12-round fight. And he goes in there and he scientifically breaks down his opponents, similar to Lomachenko. But Lomachenko wins every round that he's breaking his opponents down. Crawford doesn't. He's lost several rounds during his career against fighters, and you can make an argument that he was down on cards in several of his wins, where he comes back and just all of a sudden opens up, and his hand speed is deceiving, his accuracy is there, his power is you can't deny it, and the best thing that I like about this guy is normally I don't like fighters that switch from orthodox to southpaw and back and forth and back and forth.
Right.
But he seemingly does it seamlessly and is able to put the hurt on his opponent from either hand. I think I think he gets underestimated by the fan base, to be honest with you, Sal.
Yeah, I could agree with that comment, and he like I said, he did it all last night. He switched back to orthodox, and then he was southpaw, and when he really felt confident, he stayed orthodox, and I think that was the power that really caught up with Kavaliauskas, whatever. I got to learn these names.
That's now all of a sudden I can't say Kavaliauskas. Kavaliauskas. I don't know. We need Muskionis to tell us how to pronounce it.
Definitely.
But anyway, hey Sal, this is actually our last show until 2020. So I wanted to get your thoughts. These last couple of years, boxing is clearly on the upswing in terms of fights and matchups and stuff. I still have my issues with the sport in terms of the young fighters and not being tested early enough on. It seems like until they get a belt, then they evolve into fighters. And in my opinion, that's not the way it should be, because what's happening is the powers that be, promoters and networks and management and stuff like that, are devaluing the titles themselves, But putting that, my opinion, aside, how do you see 2020 coming? I mean, there's so many potential good fights. Do you think it's going to pick up where we're leaving off now? Do you see it continuing to go on the upswing? What's your thoughts?
Billy, I think, as I said a couple of years ago, boxing always had its way of rebooting itself and reestablishing the great sport that it is. And I think we're experiencing that right now. And I think 2020 is going to be a super year of big fights. You know, you've got some big fights we're talking about right now. And so I think boxing has definitely established itself as the fight game that it is. And, you know, I think the rebooting process has been really established. And I'm so happy, and I look forward to seeing the year of 2020 and all the great fights we're going to have in store. You know why? Because some of these fighters get it, and they know what the fans want. And when I see a fighter challenging himself against an equal opponent, I'm all for it, pal. I'm all for it. And I think more and more of these fighters are stepping up.
What's the biggest fight that you would like to see in 2020?
Oh, boy, that's a loaded question. I definitely want to see the Lomachenko-Lopez fight. I'd like to see Deontay Wilder beat, let's see, Anthony Jacobs.
Joshua. Anthony Joshua. Hey, I was saying,
I know, Anthony Joshua.
Maybe by the time that fight happens, I'll be getting another meal out of you.
Yeah, you probably will.
You know,
come down and collect it, pal.
I'm gonna. I said when I was opening up the show, I'm coming down sooner than I thought. I'm gonna fast. Go down there. I might bring a whole gaggle of people and make them sit at one table and say, "Oh no, they're all part of my dinner, Sal." You know.
Oh, we'll have a party. I promise you. We'll talk boxing. We can probably run a show from there. Who knows?
Yeah, that would be. We're due. We're due. You know, I had a dream about. It's funny you say that. I had a dream about that last night. I was showing somebody around your restaurant. And they said they were saying, "Oh wow, you know." I said, "Yeah," and that's the corner we always do the show from. I said, "We haven't done one in a while." I swear to you, I had this dream. It was last night, and I don't know what. It's weird. It's funny you just said that because it just jogged my memory. But yeah, I'm with you. I think the Wilder Anthony Joshua fight has to happen. Anthony Joshua himself said that he wants it to happen. With Wilder or Tyson Fury in 2020. But here's going to be the stumbling block. You know, Anthony Joshua, his titles mean a lot to him, and he's got two mandatories right off the bat that he's got to take on. One being against Pulev, and then the other one is going to go against Alexander Usyk. Usyk is the WBO's mandatory challenger, and Kubrat Pulev is the IBF challenger. So theoretically, he's got those two fights to handle, and then he could possibly set up a fight with Wilder or Tyson Fury towards the end of 2020. The sad thing is we were talking about a fight with Deontay Wilder and AJ to happen sometime this year, last year. You know what I mean? And now it's already off another year. You know, so it's unfortunate. But when these guys, we all want unifications, but what people have a tendency to forget is each of these sanctioning bodies require mandatory defenses, otherwise they strip you. So in order to keep these titles, you have to defend mandatory. So you know, and then the fighters always blame each other. But I hope it happens with either one. I'm with AJ. I think that I would like to see Tyson Fury fight him or Wilder. What do you think?
I think those are two great fights for AJ, and you know, I'm a Wilder fan. I'd like to see Wilder beat both of them, but you know that's yet to be established and seen, or even made right now. So we'll see what happens. But AJ, he's tough. I know he is, and I saw that last fight with Ortiz that he really established his presence again, reestablished his presence all over again. And you know, I was glad for him, even though I wanted Ortiz. But Ortiz, hey, guess what? He became complacent. He gained a lot of weight, and he paid the price for not doing what he should have done.
Yeah. So, well, you know, just to say something, which I know probably gets your goat. They interview Andy Ruiz after the fight, and he says, you know, I finally admit too much partying. I wasn't training. And I'm saying to myself, what a stupid thing. I mean, first of all, he shocked the world. He shocked
the world.
He shocked Anthony Joshua. And I'm sure he shocked himself and his own team when he beat Anthony Joshua the first time. Anyone else, and knowing that he was going to get the rematch, knowing that he was contractually tied to the rematch, I would think that this guy would have did his damnedest to be in top physical condition, and instead he pulls a Chris Arreola and fills up on tacos and Coronas. He loved the limelight, but at what point does somebody from his team grab him and say, "What the hell are you doing?"
Exactly, Billy. You couldn't have said anything more true. And I'll tell you what, in a fight game, the prize has to be worth the price. And, to win the title in a shocking, amazing way from Anthony Joshua and to show up overweight, fat, and sloppy, that doesn't do you justice, and it doesn't do the fight game justice. And he let everybody down that night because he should have been a little more competitive, a little more in shape, and no way should he come in a ring 30 pounds overweight.
Well,
That's an embarrassment.
The thing is that, luckily for heavyweights, they don't have to worry about weight. But here's the thing. He knew damn well what AJ was going to do in that fight. And they didn't seem to have a plan B. I'm talking about Team Ruiz. Credit to Anthony Joshua for going back to the drawing table and taking a look at the way he fights, and he was disciplined. Now, can he do that to everybody? Who knows? But I'm more disappointed in Andy Ruiz than I am happy for AJ, because AJ I thought should have won the first fight. It was Andy Ruiz's position to really, really solidify his name in the history books. Now it's going to be a similar thing to, he didn't even have the title for a year, and it's going to hurt him. But he's going to eventually get a big money fight, and it's going to be against Wilder, because Wilder is going to fight him. And I think that should he go in good shape, I think he gives Deontay some trouble too, to be honest with you.
Well, he's a shorter opponent, of course, and I was always a shorter opponent than all my foes, and I'll tell you, I just love to get in there, work in there, slip, feint, do all those things that a lot of these fighters don't do anymore. And man, when you get in that wheelhouse and you could unleash a barrage of punches, he's got that short stature, and you could do that with that. You could go with the uppercuts, the hooks, the overhand rights, a lot of those things, and we'll have to see how Deontay Wilder is working with his boxing skills, and hopefully it'll be a good fight. Hey, we got to mention, Bill, because I can't believe we have not mentioned, with all the fights coming up for 2020, where do you see Canelo Alvarez going next fight?
That's an interesting question. That I think that they're talking about him possibly going down to super middleweight, and Callum Smith is the name that he would go after. I would hope he's the best super middleweight. But to tell you the truth, I thought that he looked really good at light heavyweight against Kovalev. And I would love to see him fight Bivol. He could fight Dimitri Bivol at super middleweight too, because Bivol could make that weight easily. Honestly, Canelo Alvarez against Dimitri Bivol is the fight that I want to see. I want to see Canelo fight that guy. But I'm not going to listen. I've been critical of Canelo. So have you. The whole tainted meat thing. Really, we lost a couple of steps with him. But since then, he has stepped up. He although his opponents are calculated, he has beaten some big names in exciting fights. I give him credit with the Daniel Jacobs fight, who now Daniel Jacobs is moving up to the super middleweight division. So who knows? Maybe we get to see a rematch with them. But the fight I'd like to see Canelo in is against Bivol.
Yes, and that would be a great fight. And like I said, you and I, we have watched for years Canelo Alvarez grow into the beast and the monster he has evolved to. And he's an exciting fighter. He's very much methodical and calculating when he's going after his opponent, and he breaks him down. And I love him. I love him now, and I think he's great. And I think that the promoter and his whole camp are going to be very calculating on choosing his next opponent as well. It's going to be a good fight, whoever he faces, and hopefully he'll prove to be the fighter and the champion that he truly is. Who is the fighter that I liked? I can't think of him right now. I got to look back at some of my records there. But he was a David. No.
Lemieux.
David Lemieux. Yeah, he French fighter. Yes, I liked him. I liked him a lot, and I haven't heard much of anything from him or about him now. I don't know what his next move is. I know he's got some really couple bad losses, but he's still a puncher. He's still a fighter, and I'd like to see if he's going to give it a run for 2020.
He fought recently in a knockdown-filled fight, and he's trying to make a comeback. The problem with him is that he's not disciplined enough.
No.
And he's a one-dimensional fighter. He's a seek and destroy fighter. And if he maintained his discipline and stayed at the lower weight, he could make that work. But the middleweight division and above is pretty chock full of talent right now. It boils down to what I say all the time. These young fighters on the way up, and David Lemieux is no different. I knew his first trainer, and they were very careful with him. And then he started believing his own press clippings, and left. And the end is the rest is history. I don't know if he gets another major shot, but he's gonna have to climb that ladder again, Sal. That's for sure.
Yep, that's for sure. And he could prove it to all of us, or he could just get some decent money fights, and that would be it on his last call. But we'll see. But yeah, 2020, here we come, and I'll tell you, Bill, I'm excited. There's some big fights that we're going to have to see.
There's no doubt. Sal, I appreciate your time. I want to wish you and yours a very Merry Christmas and a happy and prosperous New Year, and start ordering the food, because I'm going to come down and collect. And we are going to have and we should talk with John, see if we can get some kind of a little show at the same time. We'll kill like 3 or 4 birds at one shot.
Yeah, I think that is ideal, 100%. And then we also got to talk about next year's Hall of Fame up in Canastota. So I think a meeting, you coming down, and I could probably put you up in one of these hotels here, and we'll take it from there, pal.
Hey, I tell you, I'm afraid to go to the Hall of Fame this year. The last time I sat with Bernard Hopkins, he was slapping me around. I don't want to see him again. He might want to make a comeback against me. I don't know, man. He was pretty rough in Vegas. You'll get, that's right. I'll have you there to protect me. All right, that's good stuff. So
put a collar around me. I'll be your pit bull.
There you go. Sal, I'll see you soon, my man.
All right, my friend. Thank you. God bless, and have a great Christmas and New Year holiday, buddy.
Thank you, man. I'll talk soon.
Bye-bye.
That's my man, Sal Rocky Senecola. I'm collecting, man. I'm collecting. I'm going to go down there and get my dinner, and maybe we'll do a little event or something. I don't know. We'll happens, but in any event, hey, it's the holidays, and we're going commercial free. We're going commercial free today, so I'm going to get my man Dax on the line here in a second, and getting back to Terence Crawford real quick, and I'll talk more with Dax here in a sec, but of the matter is that, I was looking at the welterweight division, and, who would we want to see Crawford fight? I mean, of course, Errol Spence Jr. is the fight that we want. But would a Manny Pacquiao fight make sense? Would a Danny Garcia fight make sense? Those are the names that we want to see. Is he going to get stuck doing another, mandatory? Who knows? Joining us right now is my man, Dax Khan. Good morning, Dax.
Good morning, Billy C.
What'd you think of the fight, my man?
I thought it was a good fight. I thought Terence Crawford did a great job. People were laughing at this fight, Bill, when it was signed. They were criticizing the choice of opponent, even though he wasn't mandatory. Crawford really didn't have a choice in the matter. But Kavaliauskas, if people really watch the sport as much as they claim they do, they'd understand that this guy's been around. Not only is he an Olympian, but, he's been on undercards of major fights like Bradley Manny Pacquiao in 2016. He was on some Maurice Hooker undercards. He was on some Ray Beltran undercards. So the guy's not unknown. It's just fans don't pay attention. Crawford had some adversity in the third round. He always does take that round or two off to warm up. But after Kavaliauskas landed those hard shots and put Crawford down, we've seen what happens quite often with Crawford. He punishes his opponents almost as if, how dare you come in here and think that you're on my level and you're going to compete with me on my night in my ring. Crawford is the best setup finisher in boxing today, in my opinion. While Deontay Wilder, of course, is the best one-punch finisher, Crawford systematically destroys his opponents. He never lets them off the hook, and when he sees that they're hurt, he ends the fight. All this criticism, Bill, Crawford's 14-0 in world title fights now, 5-0 in 3 in lineal fights, 7-0 against former or current world titleists. And, Julius Ndongo, maybe a little unknown, but he was also an Olympian on top of a champion. Ricky Burns, a 3-division champion. Yuriorkis Gamboa, a 2-time world champion and gold medalist. Postal was undefeated. Jeff Horn was an Olympian. Amir Khan's a silver medalist and a former unified champion. What more can this guy do? What are people complaining about?
You're 100% correct. And I was pointing out, and when he first came out, when he first hit the mainstream, so to speak, against Prescott, that was supposed to be hey, let's get Prescott a win against this undefeated kid out of Nebraska. How good can he be? And they stayed with Crawford as the B-side, I think, all the way up until the Gamboa fight. So then they realized, hey, wait, hold on there, Baba Louie. Maybe we got a quality fighter here, and the rest is history. But you're right about Kavaliauskas because, this is a guy that, and I was saying this earlier, this is a guy that fought with the knowledgeable fan. If they would look at the names of the guys that Kavaliauskas fought, they would see that he fought these tough opponents that a lot of the young fighters on the way up do not fight. They're the ones that they avoid, and they hand them these cream puffs. And Kavaliauskas was a mandatory, just like you said. And I just think that the fact that the casual fan didn't know him, that they started being very critical of Terence for fighting him. And I think he did show last night that he was a formidable foe. The problem is Crawford is that much better.
Absolutely. I mean, you hit it right on the head about the knowledgeable fan. Leading into that, my reason for reiterating that is Errol Spence Jr., who's a great fighter, gets all this praise and credit for going over to the UK and beating Kell Brook. But you know what? Terence Crawford did the same years before Errol Spence did, and he did it, as you stated again, as the B-side, expecting to lose, supposed to be an opponent for Ricky Burns. So what I don't understand it. It's not even something that's you can sit there and really debate back and forth because you're not going to get it through some of these fans' minds, Bill, no matter what you do.
I know, and it's unfortunate that that's the case. Another fight I wanted to get your thoughts on real quick. Well, before I do that, I don't want to jump away from Terence real quick. I agree with what you said. Terence Crawford, similar to Lomachenko, breaks down his opponents. But the difference, like I was saying to Sal earlier, the difference with Lomachenko is he breaks down his opponents, but he still wins the round. I think that Terence Crawford breaks his opponents down and doesn't really care if he wins the round or not because he knows what's coming. And we saw that last night with Kavaliauskas, because he clearly didn't win a couple of those early rounds. But when he shifts it into that second and third gear, he's a tough out. He's accurate. He's powerful. And you missed one point when you were giving the accolades to Crawford. He enjoys beating the hell out of his opponents. He remember, you and I have talked many times. He has a legitimate mean streak, and I got to tell you, I think that's the one thing when you put all his talent. We all know he's got the talent. He displays it every time out. But if you put that aside, I think that most dangerous attribute that he has is the mean streak. And when he flips that switch, he's a hard out. He enjoys. It looks like he enjoys it too much, like Sonny Liston used to.
Oh yeah, good analogy right there. Crawford, you do kind of see that change in demeanor while he's inside the ring. In his face, in his eyes, and just the way he goes after his opponent, especially when the fight starts getting heated. Kind of reminds me of Carl Froch after the Jermaine Taylor fight. People were all over Carl Froch, stating, while he was losing the early rounds, he's really not that good. And I remember being in the press conference and Carl Froch stating, it's a 12-round fight for a reason. There's no need to rush. You go in there, you set it up, and you do what you got to do. And, that's what Crawford does when he goes in there. He breaks his guys down. He sets them up for that knockout, and he doesn't rush. That's the difference between a good fighter and a great fighter, because they go in there and, they go to work. It's not, it's not about that immediate knock. It's go to work, because they're doing it against strong guys. Anthony Joshua, Andy Ruiz is a perfect example. If you don't sit there and you don't go to work and you do not break your opponent down and you're not careful inside there, what ends up happening? You end up losing out of just pure recklessness, or just, being lazy or rushing in there. That's what separates good fighters from the great fighters. What do you think?
I agree with you. And another thing about Crawford that I admire, we see a lot of fighters that switch from orthodox to southpaw, but I can't recall a fighter that can do it so seamlessly like Terence can, and have success and power and knockout ability, not just hurt power, but knockout ability from either hand the way he does.
Yeah, and he does it like effortlessly. Yeah, you don't even realize until about 10, 15 seconds later that he switched up, because he does it so easily. He transitions like that.
Well, I think he baits his opponents. Like last night, Kavaliauskas seemed to have, with one side, I believe it was when he was fighting southpaw, he seemed to be ready for that and was doing better. And all of a sudden, Crawford realized that and switched. And next thing you know, the fight's over.
Yeah, we've seen the same thing with when he fought Hank Lundy. We've seen the same thing when he fought Victor Postal. We've seen the same thing when he fought Felix Diaz. As soon as he made that switch, all of a sudden he's just levels ahead of these guys.
Yeah, no, he's fun to watch. He's an exciting fighter. I said in the beginning of the show, I do, however, don't believe that he was doing it purposely to give the fight fans some entertainment. I don't want to believe it, because that's a dangerous mindset. I hope that fighters go into that ring ready to take care of business. If they need to break a fighter down for a couple of rounds, that's one thing. But if they feel that they can win at any time and they're dragging their feet because they want to entertain, that's a mistake, because all it takes is one shot from anybody. I
agree. You know who, real quick, who Kavaliauskas kind of reminds me of is Sergey Derevchenko. With his style and his toughness, and the fact you don't know a lot about him, but when you see him in action, all of a sudden it's like, okay, this guy really is might be as good as his resume is.
Derevchenko is a tough son of a gun. I mean, there's no question about that, and he's a guy I'd like to see more, and I'd like to see Mean Machine Kavaliauskas again as well. But in another fight on that card, Teofimo Lopez destroyed Richard Comey to pick up his title. He looked great. He's young. He's powerful. He's got hand speed. He's got movement. And now he's earned a shot to fight Vasily Lomachenko. What's your thoughts on that? I mean, I was saying to Sal earlier, people don't look at Lomachenko as an aging fighter, but the facts are the facts. He is an aging fighter. Is the youth of Teofimo Lopez going to be enough to upset Lomachenko, or is Lomachenko going to make Lopez look like an ordinary fighter?
You know, Lopez has that one-punch equalizer in the terms where even if he was looking like an ordinary fighter, all he needs to do is land that one punch. But with that being said, the difference with Lomachenko and other fighters is that mental mindset. You know, he's not only is he a machine in the way he performs, but, you know, inside he's always thinking. He's a thinking fighter. You know, it's chess, it's not checkers. So at this stage, for Lopez to be able to beat Lomachenko would have to be by knockout. But, you know, Lomachenko, he's 31 years old. So, you know, today that's kind of young in boxing, even in these lower weight classes. But I wouldn't rush that fight. I think they're rushing it a little bit too much. We have, right now in the sport, Bill, if you go from top to bottom, we have a lot of young fighters. It's almost becoming like a throwback sort of, where, you know, these best fighters are, you know, between the ages 20 and 25. So what about, you know, two guys in that division who are really, really good and who are going to be superstars facing off against each other, and then the winner fighting Lomachenko? And I'm talking about Teofimo Lopez against WBC champion Devin Haney. In my opinion, that's a must-see fight.
Well, listen, I'm with you, and that's my argument when I was giving kudos to Kavaliauskas, because he fought those tough fights. The only difference today, and I think that in the last 2 years, we've had some really good fights, and 2020 is shaping up to continue the trend. The only thing that I would like to change, I'd like to change two things. One, I'd like to change the fact of overprotecting young fighters and set up the young fighters against each other prior to championships. Unfortunately, today, what happens is a young fighter will get coddled, and then they hand him a belt, and then he starts fighting real fights. And you know, there's always titleists. And I think that the reason they do that is networks and management and promotion feel that they can't sell a fight unless there's a title. I think boxing would become more solid, and if the younger fighters fought each other, because the fan base would grow. You wouldn't have just a fly-by-night fan, you know, and that's seemingly what we end up with today. The other thing is that, you know, we've seen it. Matchroom, Golden Boy, Top Rank, they cross the lines, they fight each other, they fight on each other's networks, they do combined broadcasts, etc., etc. The only one that's not playing nice is PBC, and they're the ones that are ruining it, so to speak. They have their own fighters, their own champions, they like to stay in their own little world, and I think the division is going to eventually hurt them. I personally, I think that collectively they don't have any talent. There's a couple of talented fighters there that they have. Obviously, Wilder is you know, by many people's rankings, he's the best heavyweight out there. I disagree, because I look at talent. But like the Charlo brothers, they're nothing. You know, I just wish that they would all. There's enough money to be made. What's your thoughts on both of those issues?
There is enough money to be made, but you know, the problem here is money, more or less, and the niche, for lack of a better word. You know, fans more or less have fallen into that niche kind of category where they only follow a certain few guys. Prime example is what I was stating before, how nobody really knew who Terence Crawford's opponent was last night. Why? Because you're not watching the whole sport. Same thing for these lower weights. People aren't watching the whole sport, and the PBC is capitalizing on that. So hopefully we don't have that problem. And as for titles, of course, there's way too many titles. Can you name who the WBA regular welterweight title is? Title holders are.
You see how many you look at the WBA, they got Manny Pacquiao, Alexander Vesputin, Virgil Ortiz, all listed as title holders. I mean, they're the only sanctioning body that if they just don't feel normal unless they have 5 or 6 world title holders in each division. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
And their minor titles and their regional titles, and for different parts of the world, you can say, okay, you can understand that in a way, but then when they start making those same titles as interim, you know, it really is. It's just hurting the sport. But, you know, you're absolutely right, where it does seem today that unless there's a title on the line, fans aren't interested. Bob Arum made a a point the other day when he stated the problem today is you can't sell tickets for live events.
Well, this is true, and that's because of the comfort level you can have watching it at your own house. I mean, what has evolved in the last 12 months? Exactly what we predicted on the show 4 years ago. I mean, it's pretty eerie if you think about it. But
Right.
with all the streaming services and where you can watch, I mean, it's unlimited. But I want to ask you something. You bring up there was a great segue about the titles. We're talking about heavyweights. Everybody wants to see AJ against Wilder, of course, but Wilder's going to be fighting Fury, and AJ's got 2 mandatories against Pulev and Usyk, respectively. But all of a sudden, here comes Dillian White. He didn't look all that super great in his last fight. He looked overweight, looked a lot overweight, but he hasn't really had a chance to train. They lifted the suspension off of him, and now he's the interim champ again. But he's all ticked off because the WBC is going to make Deontay Wilder their franchise champion, which I don't understand why a franchise champion gets to boast that they're a title holder, but yet they're not subject to mandatory challengers. Can you explain that to me?
I wish I could. I wish somebody could explain it to me.
Yeah.
What is the point of being a franchise champion then if you're not going to have any mandatories or you're not obligated to defend that title?
It's a joke. And Dillian White is 100% correct at being upset over this. And, it doesn't help Deontay because a lot of people that are in the know feel that Deontay Wilder has avoided quality opposition for his whole career. The best opponent he fought was Tyson Fury. And, granted, I don't know if there's anybody aside from the Wilder family that believes that it should have been a draw. I mean, everybody, even people that hardly watch boxing, that watched that fight, thought that Tyson Fury won the fight despite being knocked down twice. You get knocked down twice in a fight, generally you're losing. How much of a dominance did Tyson Fury do in order to win the fight on 99% of the people's scorecards after being knocked down twice? And, now we're going to see a rematch that chances are, I think Wilder's going to go in for the kill a little quicker because the one knock I have on Tyson Fury is for a guy his size, he doesn't really possess the power that he should.
This is true. Deontay Wilder's resume is not that harsh. Maybe not the names that we would like to see on there, but let's be honest. His resume is not, this horrible, and I don't think he ducks anybody. Deontay Wilder just fights whoever they put in front of him. If that's a valid excuse for everybody else, it's a valid excuse for Deontay Wilder, so it would be unfair to criticize him in that way. As for the Tyson Fury fight, the old rule is, Bill, when you're facing the champion, always expect to go in there 2 or 3 rounds down on the cards, especially when you're on the champion's home turf. They did fight here in the States. So, I mean, it was wrong. Should it have been a win for Tyson Fury? Yes, but it happened in boxing. It wasn't the worst decision I've ever seen, and we'll see what happens in the rematch.
Yeah. Well, do you think that Fury, if Wilder tries to fight the same fight, we're going to end up with the same result. Fury's going to handle it. I think Wilder, in Wilder's defense, here's his chance. In the second fight against Tyson Fury, if Wilder, I hear all the time, oh, no, he's got a great jab. Oh, no, he just doesn't need it. Oh, yeah, okay. If he does have a jab, and he does, have the ability to move around the ring a little bit, just a little bit, and he does that against Fury, he might have a better chance. But if Deontay Wilder attacks Fury, like I think he will, I think he's going to go in for the kill. He feels he dropped him twice in the last fight, almost killed him, the one knockdown. I think he's going to go in for the kill. And I just believe that Tyson Fury will be able to counter him, but he just doesn't have that pop to knock him on his ass. I hope I'm wrong. But that's the way I see it. I just think that Wilder has an opportunity to show that he can change his game. AJ did. AJ changed his game a bit. He ripped a page out of the Klitschko playbook, and I think that he respects Vladimir Klitschko a lot. And I think that Klitschko is basically saying to him, AJ, listen, if you fight smart, you could be at the top of the game for a long time, just like he was. And I think AJ bought into it, Dax. And Deontay has to do something similar. He has to change a little bit. Yeah, he's got the most powerful punch in the heavyweight division, it seems. But he's got to change something. Eventually, somebody's going to, get the right script, and then it's going to be over for Wilder.
Deontay Wilder is capable of boxing that way. Speak of Klitschko, I know that there was a time Deontay Wilder and Klitschko spent together, and Klitschko was trying to teach Wilder how to perfect his jab, and Klitschko has one of the best jabs in the history of the sport. So Deontay Wilder's problem is he just gets a little overzealous. When he does that, that's when we see him swing wild. If he just works behind his jab, and which he is capable of, Deontay Wilder could literally just control that division very much like Klitschko and just knock everybody out with a 1-2, and he doesn't really need to do much else more. But, again, that's up to Deontay Wilder whether or not he can stay composed like that. But, we'll see in this rematch, and we'll see what 2020 brings. So this is our last show of 2019, is it not?
This is correct. We'll be back after the first of the year. My question, you're hitting all the segue buttons perfectly. What fights do you want to see in 2020, Dax? I mean, which matchups do you think, in your opinion, are key that we must see in 2020?
Deontay Wilder, Tyson Fury is one. That's already written and signed, rather. We need to see Terence Crawford against Errol Spence Jr. if he should happen to return. Hopefully he does. Or against Sean Porter. I believe that we need to see Nui against Louis Neary. Both are undefeated. Louis Neary is a KO artist. They're in the same division. And Nui is a pound-for-pound fighter. Dimitri Bivol against Canelo. That would be a personal wish for mine in 2020. I don't care if it happens at super middleweight or light heavyweight. After that, we'll just see what happens. Pretty much the light heavyweight division, more or less, has been cleaned up by Arthur Beterbiev. He is the lineal champion. He holds 2 of the 3 belts. The cruiserweight division is rebuilding. The middleweight division is kind of thinned out. The super middleweight division is so-so. But, those fights right there are the only thing I could think of on the top of my head. But, for 2020, asking Bill, who do you have as a fighter of the year for 2019?
I got to be honest. I haven't even given that any thought. Inoue is a fighter that I loved his fight for the World Boxing Super Series against Nonito Donaire, and he's a guy that's probably flying under the radar. I don't know. There's a lot of good fights. It's hard. It's hard to put your finger on it. I don't want to. I hate when these guys win Fighter of the Year because they fought 3 times, and you're not looking at the opposition. But, I don't know. Why? Who do you like?
Well, Inoue, is, in my opinion, winning that World Boxing Super Series, defeating 4 established champions, not belt holders, but Jamie McDonald was unified, Manuel Rodriguez, Juan Carlos Payano was a former champion, Nonito Donaire, 4-division champion, first ballot Hall of Famer. The stats on those guys, 108-8 with 60 knockouts, which is just amazing that, he did that. And then, of course, we have Canelo, who inside of 12 months, he beat Rocky Fielding at the end of 2018. Then he beats Danny Jacobs. Then he moves up 2 weight classes. He beats Sergey Kovalev. And if we were going by activity, the guy that really flies under the radar for me is Emmanuel Navarrete. This is a guy, he beats Dogbo. He comes back. He beats Dogbo in the rematch. Then he fights 3 more times. 5 title fights inside of 12 months, and he wins them all dominantly. So it's a hard choice this year.
I think you're right. I think that Canelo, you kind of got to lean towards Canelo because, as much as all those other fighters, were in great fights, when I look at Fighter of the Year, I look at guys that, not only had great performances, fought, frequently, but also what did they bring to the sport? Canelo, in my opinion, hands down, has brought a lot to the sport. He sells out the arenas. There's no question about that. Rocky Fielding, like you mentioned, maybe wasn't a killer, but he still was a super middleweight that Canelo moved up to fight. The Daniel Jacobs fight, we were there for that fight. That was a tough fight. Danny Jacobs is a tough fighter. He's a great fighter, and he wins that one. And then the Kovalev fight, people say, Kovalev, he's washed up. He's not washed up. He had a great performance in his fight prior to Canelo, and Canelo looked vicious as light heavyweight. Sal and I were just talking about that. I'd like to see Canelo fight Bivol. I like the Bivol fight against Canelo. And they're talking about Callum Smith too, possibly. So I don't know, but I guess I'd have to lean towards Canelo if I had to pick somebody right this second. And then again, even though he lost against Andy Ruiz, I got to give my man AJ credit too for rebounding. I mean, I don't know. Canelo, I guess, is my number one guy.
And what about, without question, in my opinion, prospect of the year has to be Virgil Ortiz Jr.
Looking good. The kid's looking really good. And that's the funny thing. You look at a guy like Teofimo Lopez at 15-0, who just picked up a title, and in the olden days, he would be still considered like a young prospect. And that's what's missing in the sport today, to get excited about a guy who's 15-0 and then start seeing him climb the ranks, because the talent pool is so full. They have everything so diluted right now that you get a guy like Lopez. No disrespect to Lopez, I happen to love the kid, but he's a world champion at 15-0. He's not a Lomachenko who fought 350 amateur fights. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's but today that just seems to be the model, where guys are coming out and trying to win world titles as fast as they can. I don't know if it's more of an ego type competition to see who can win the titles the quickest and set themselves down in history. But definitely, it's definitely interesting. Or maybe on the other hand, Bill, the plan for a lot of these guys is come in, win the title, get as many wins, make as much money as you can, and get out of the sport early, which is nice, and that's what it used to be. You used to get out of the sport early. Remember, at one point in time, 30 years old was an old man. Nowadays, guys are just coming into their own. Coach says, what about Daniel Dubois? Coach, Daniel Dubois is being handled perfectly, in my opinion. They're not rushing him, and they're building him up to be the full package before he steps in there against any of these top names, and that's going to save him from getting end up with a loss and being called overhyped.
Yeah, but a guy like Daniel Dubois should be fighting other fighters that are climbing the ladder like him. That's the difference between yesteryear and today. And it only makes fighters better. Yes, it's risky because they could lose. But isn't that what boxing? I mean, that shouldn't end a career if a fighter loses early on. It makes them better. That's all. He's going to end up getting a shot. Like Kubrat Pulev, for example. Pulev has paid his dues. He's fought a lot of guys. He's at the best that he's ever going to be right now. Can you say that about Daniel Dubois? That's the question. And when they get their world title shot, I believe that a fighter should be the best that they can be at that point, and then see what happens as a champion. Because you know as well as anyone, Dax, that once you become a champion, it kind of kicks up your game a notch.
Well, sometimes, we're depending on who your promoter is, you just fight the same old recycled guys again and again.
This is true. Or you go and you have too many tacos and Coronas. But anyway, Dax, any final thoughts heading into 2020?
Just, it's been a great 2019. Just hopefully this momentum carries over through all of 2020. It's starting out already great in January with the fights that are already signed. And I think we have a pretty good pound-for-pound list that, exiting 2019.
I tell you the truth, I could flip-flop. My top three could all be tied for one, and I wouldn't argue with anybody if they position them anywhere else. Lomachenko, Crawford and Canelo. I mean, they could be any order of the top three, and I'm happy. So, Dax, I wish you and your family a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and I'll be looking forward to 2020, brother.
All right, same to you and yours, Bill, and to everybody else out there.
All right, Dax, have a good one, brother.
You too.
That's Dax Kine. You can check out his column up on BillyCBoxing.com. Him and Johnston Brown and everybody else, very active up there. If you don't have Billy C. Boxing set as your homepage, you're dead to me. No. It's interesting stuff up there, so make sure you try to get with it. You know what I mean? But in any event, like I said, we are going commercial free today. So hopefully you guys are appreciating it. I know the radio stations might not be appreciating it as much because they need those breaks, but I'm sure they'll fill in their own commercials. So to all the radio affiliates we're with, we're glad to be part of your sports programming, and apologize for today, but it is the end of the year, and we're crazy like that. Speaking of crazies, joining me right now is my man Alex Papali. Good morning, Alex.
Good morning, Billy C. How are you?
God, you're awake today.
I'm up, baby.
Yeah, Crawford.
I slept my second night with a weighted blanket, and I feel as snug as a bug under the rug.
I sleep with a weighted blanket too. It's a 140-pound Rottweiler. He lays right on top of me. What was your thoughts of Crawford's win over Mean Machine Kavaliauskas last night?
I really enjoyed it. I think people have made these comparisons before, but I think last night was a perfect example. If there's one fighter today who is reminiscent of Marvelous Marvin Hagler every time he goes out into that ring, it's Terence Crawford. And,
wow, whoa, wait a minute. I've never heard that comparison. Really? I never have. I never thought of it that way. You see, I think, Terence Crawford has a mean streak like Hagler did. And
we saw it last night.
Yeah, no, we see it every fight. He finishes.
Last night was like his Juan Roldan, because he had that questionable knockdown, which in this case, unlike the Hagler knockdown against Juan Roldan, that was more of a brush down. This one was legitimate. I mean, the replay showed it, and but what did Terence Crawford do? He just sort of buckled down and was like, "Okay, you're going to hurt me? Well, don't worry, I'm going to hurt you." Well, and he put the screws to him, and it was impressive.
Similar to Hagler, he's not afraid to exchange.
Exactly.
He goes in there. I think that's something that's being lost in boxing today. The safety first, it makes me ill at times because they're not exciting. But Crawford, I think as a overall boxer, and I know, I know this might affect you and change you forever, but I think that Crawford is more talented than Hagler as a boxer. I'm not overall great. Right. No, I mean overall greatness. Skills. Hagler is up there, and I was reading some of the Eyebrows all-time great list. I was shocked at how some of these fighters have climbed the ranks here. Some of these, especially Mayweather, I can't believe he's even in the mix. But Crawford, you're right. I mean, Crawford, the mean streak, similar to Hagler. Hagler never really smiled and goofed around, though.
Right, and the other thing is he's ambidextrous. He can switch back and forth with ease, and everybody seems to have an opinion as to what style he is more effective for him. But he goes ahead and does his own thing anyway. The only thing that's very, very different is that he has a whole network that has completely bought into him and is promoting him. Marvelous Marvin Hagler really didn't. He sort of toiled in obscurity for a long time. Until he finally got recognition. But, of course, our media is very different today. So I think that's one of the things. But yeah, I mean, I thought Crawford looked really good last night. He's just fun to watch. Kavaliauskas, I thought brought more to the table than expected. He definitely hits pretty hard, and he came in shape, unlike Andy Ruiz last week. So I think that's the big thing about this sport is that it's one thing to get the opportunity, but you have to make yourself prepared and ready for the opportunity. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to grab it if it's there. And Kavaliauskas at least was ready for it, but he had way too much of a mountain to climb in front of him.
You hit it on the head. Terence Crawford is fun to watch. He's fun. He breaks his opponents down. He goes in there. He's not afraid to exchange. And many fighters that I've talked to that are former world champions, etc., they say today, in like any era, and even today, I should say, it's easy to get a title today. It's easier today to get a title than ever before. Keeping it is another story. And the reason is what I am crying about all morning today. The fact that people get these title shots so early on without being tested explains why they're so hard to keep. And you make a great point about Andy Ruiz. Andy Ruiz had found himself in a position to become really regarded as one of the best heavyweight champions ever and regarded as one of the most lovable champions ever if he beat AJ the second time. I mean, there would have been no question of what people would have thought of Andy Ruiz, and he let that opportunity slip through his hands. Well, he couldn't let the taco slip through his hands. But the truth of the matter is that for him to even admit, yeah, I give him credit for admitting, yeah, I partied too much. Yeah, I didn't start training in time. When does the corner grab the guy and slap him and say, "What the hell are you doing? You're going to mess this opportunity up"? When, you and I talk about that. It's always, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and all of a sudden they lose. He didn't train right. He ate too many tacos. Where's the we?
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and I think that was one of the things that was kind of sad in some of the post-fight interviews with Ruiz. Was at one point I can't remember if it was on DAZN or if it was later on some other media where I heard one little clip of him where he did mention that during the camp, his father had kept saying to him, the fight's getting closer. You got to do something. We got to start working. And he didn't listen. And, I mean, I don't know. That was what was really unfortunate about last week.
Yeah, but Alex, how many times has that happened in the past?
Oh, exactly. Exactly. And that's the thing about it that's sort of really sad is that it shows you that all the thinking we had of what that fight showed in June was, oh my God, can Joshua ever recover from this? Well, the other question we should have asked, can Ruiz ever recover from this? Because this is going to be such a like winning the lottery type celebration. He's going to need to rein it in and get some discipline back in his life. And he certainly didn't do that. And he went the route exactly of Buster Douglas. In fact, if anything, you could argue that Buster Douglas at least went out on his shield. Andy Ruiz went out on the buffet table. And that is really unfortunate because – and the other thing that was just so pathetic about it was that as soon as it was over, it was like, yeah, I didn't train. Can you give me another shot? No, this was it.
Yeah, but yes, he didn't train. Yes, he didn't capitalize. He didn't, he didn't do what he should have done. He didn't take advantage of his opportunity. I mean, that's clearly, the case. He went out and spent money like a drunken sailor. He figured, that life is great now. But the other side of the coin was that AJ did learn a valuable lesson by losing the fight. Everybody is pointing. They have a tendency to point to Ruiz's downfall, which is true. But on the other hand, AJ contributed to it. If AJ fought the same way that he fought in the first fight, Andy Ruiz would have won again.
Right.
You know, and you know, this fight probably made Andy Ruiz a better fighter, just like the first fight made Anthony Joshua a better fighter. That's my point about sometimes when a loss is good. You know, when you learn from your loss and you come back better, it's a positive. It's when you just say, screw it, I lost, I have my loss now, and I'm going for the money, you know, and just fights and go through the motions. It's going to be interesting to see what Andy Ruiz does at this point, should he continue. I think there's a matchup in the future between him and Deontay Wilder. I think that's a foregone conclusion. And I happen to think that he's going to give Wilder trouble because he likes to fight right in your face. He likes to throw a lot of punches, and he does have power. He doesn't have the power they built him up to be. They built him up to be like a Rocky Marciano one-shot knockout because he beat AJ, who's got a suspect chin.
Well, and the other thing that Ruiz has that I think will be interesting if he ever does fight Wilder is he's got a hell of a chin. But the thing about it that I think the other thing to remember, and I think that's what this year showed us, is that, yes, we have three interesting and somewhat mostly entertaining heavyweights. You know, there's a little asterisk next to that because they're heavyweights that are at the top of the division today. But they're all not that good. Think about Otto Wallin and Andy Ruiz, who, you know, put both Joshua and Fury into life or death struggles. So I do think that, you know, like I've said in the past, I think Fury is the best of them. I am looking forward in 2020 to at least get an answer between Fury and Wilder. I think Fury emerges from that. Then I think Fury versus Joshua would be a fight I would love to see. However, I'm not sure if Eddie Hearn would be all too interested in making that.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he is.
I hope that would be great.
Alex, how big of a fight would that be? No, forget the United States. How big would that fight be in England?
Oh, it would be gigantic. It would, yeah. I mean, I don't know.
And I like that matchup for AJ better than Wilder. And the only reason why I say that about Wilder is because of Wilder's punch, not boxing skill, because he doesn't have it. But back to Ruiz against Wilder. Wilder. Listen, look at the two fights Ruiz lost. He lost to Joseph Parker, which he's still crying about, and he lost the second fight to AJ. And the blueprint of those two losses were the same. Box him from the outside, use a jab, movement, tattoo him when the opportunity's there, win a fight on points. That's how you beat Ruiz. Deontay can't do it. He doesn't have movement. He displayed a jab once, the first fight against Stavern. He doesn't have it. He's reverted back to just power, and that is Deontay Wilder. That's it. That's all we're ever going to see. That's fighting into Ruiz's game because Ruiz is going to be in his chest. I'm telling you, Ruiz is going to beat Deontay Wilder should they fight. I'm telling you right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's got a big task to get past Fury in the first place. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing that I think is interesting about these heavyweights is that. We've pretty much seen that any one of those matchups is a contest because not one of them. I mean, yes, each one of them has one or two skills that make people say, "Oh, wow, see that skill? He's the best." But then there's enough flaws that they have that make it interesting. Well, yeah, but can he do this or whatever? So I don't know. One of the things that I think that I'm looking forward to also this year is seeing Usyk challenge one of these big guys.
Well, he's a mandatory for AJ.
Yeah, so I would love to see that. I think AJ, of the three of them, I think AJ is the most vulnerable to Usyk because of what we've just seen Andy Ruiz do, and the way that even in the way, you know, Joshua did not emphatically turn back the challenge of Andy Ruiz. He just sort of undid the upset because that was a stinker last week. Yes, he won, and he did what, you know, that's rarefied air to, you know, regain the heavyweight title from the guy who beat you. But he didn't do it in a dominant. That was no Lennox Lewis versus Hasim Rahman 2. That's for sure.
Yeah. Just to comment one more time on potential fight between Ruiz and Wilder. Win, lose, or draw. And assuming that Wilder loses to Tyson Fury like you've predicted many times for the rematch, I think the Andy Ruiz-Deontay Wilder fight is going to happen either way. That fight is going to happen. And I think Ruiz, whether Wilder has a loss on his record when he fights Ruiz or not, I think Ruiz is going to get the better end of Wilder. But I've said that before, and Wilder's pop has carried him through. You know?
I mean, speaking of pop, I mean, the fight that I most want to see in 2020 is Teofimo Lopez versus Vasily Lomachenko.
Okay, I was just
amazing.
You and Dax must have a camera in here, because I was just going to ask you. I was going to say, what was your thoughts on Lopez's victory over Kami, and now he earns a shot against Lomachenko? I don't know if that's such a big thing, but Dax pointed out, I keep saying Lomachenko's got, he's an older fighter, but he is only 31, but he does have a lot of mileage on him. Could Lopez, who's a young gun, who's got speed, power, he's got heart, could he pose a challenge for Lomachenko?
Absolutely. And I think part of it is because, Lomachenko is such a badass that part of why we're starting to see vulnerabilities in him is that he's fighting beyond the weight where he probably would be most ideal. So because he's fighting now, at least that was in his last fight with Campbell, which was another really good fight this year, where Campbell was in that fight because part of it was that lightweights are just a lot bigger men than, and we saw the same thing in Linares' fight, than Lomachenko can handle easily. So I think that's going to happen with the Lopez fight. He's a big lightweight. He is so strong. I really was all geared up for a good fight last night, and boom, that big shot. That really was the whole fight. Because then, Comey's a guy from Ghana. Those guys traditionally have incredible chins. He would have stood there until he was dead. So I like that stoppage because he was getting hit with big bombs. But, that first knockdown, you could tell he never really recovered from that. That was a discombobulating right hand. It was sort of like a Trevor Berbick type thing. It disconnected most of the neurons going up and down his spinal column, Billy C., because you saw those little stiff leg move he did.
Yeah, and, I'm usually very critical of the referees, especially in New York-based fights, but, at least the fights that were on TV, they all seem to do a good job, I thought, and especially in the Comey fight. The referee stopped it in time, and the Kavaliauskas fight, the referee, had him moving around. They did a good job, Couple of the questions real quick. Gamboa is taking on Gervonta Davis, who I'd like to see Gervonta Davis. One of my dream fights for 2020 is Gervonta Davis against Lomachenko. I'm a big fan of Gamboa. Most people think Gamboa doesn't stand a chance with Davis, and I can't say I really disagree. But do you think that this is going to be a competitive fight, or do you think it's going to be a showcase fight for Davis?
I have a feeling it's going to be a showcase, but if Gamboa expects to do anything more with his career, this is really the shot to do it. So I think I can't remember a year where we've still had a couple of interesting matchups in the last couple of weeks of December, and some of which could actually be entertaining fights. Where we could see like round of the year, fight of the year type thing. Davis versus Gamboa could be fun because we know Gamboa brings it, and he's chinny. He's an action fighter So all those ingredients could make for a fun fight. But yeah, I think Davis is more skilled and takes him out. But I do think that the other thing that we have is the Charlo Harrison rematch, and we have Danny Jacobs versus Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., the fight that I thought was fake for a long time, but I guess that really is happening this week. We got a lousy Star Wars movie too, so there's a lot going on before the end of the year.
Well, you've ruined it for me.
Did I mention that?
I was gonna ask you about the Danny Jacobs, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. And last week we were talking about Chavez. I mean, he's got more lives in boxing than Freddy Krueger had, but does he stand a chance against Jacobs?
I think he has a puncher's chance, but. Nah, I mean, I think Jacobs has it all over him in skill. And as long as he doesn't, walk into something, I think he should outpoint him pretty easily.
How do you think Chavez Sr., deep down, because if that is the case, and I agree with you about Junior, I mean, let's call a spade a spade. I mean, it seems like Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. has become an opponent. How do you think Papa Chavez feels about that? That must be killing him.
Yeah, I think, it must be. I wonder because I'm fascinated by, fathers and sons, heavy fathers. Hamlet's one of my favorite pieces of literature. I had a rough relationship with my dad. I wonder what that relationship is like. One thing I think in his old age, I think at least the father, I hope, can appreciate is that the son can make, these big money deals. And, so at least the son is financially successful. He's certainly not, he's not a chip off the old block in terms of his fighting prowess. But, in terms of providing for his family, I'm sure Dad is plenty proud of him.
Fight of the year or fighter of the year, Jax threw it at me today, and I honestly didn't really give it much thought. But I think even though there's so many good fighters, and Dax was very accurate with the fighters he mentioned, I think Canelo's got to get the nod. What do you think?
Well, Canelo might get the nod. I think it's Canelo or Ward in terms of fighter of the decade, because we kind of should do that too. Because
Dre Ward?
I think Dre, and I think that maybe that's why Dre looked like he was a little bit. Did you notice he looked a little fitter than usual last night? I wonder if all the social media talk of him fighting Canelo has put him on a more serious gym track, because I don't know. That's a fight I'd love to see. Canelo versus Andre Ward in 2020. I don't think it's going to happen. I think, Ward would definitely want to fight someone first and then fight. If it does happen, I'd favor Andre Ward. But I do think that Canelo, versus Callum Smith would be good. I don't see him fighting Bivol, because if there's anything that Kovalev showed, one, I thought that Canelo kind of held back a lot in that fight because he knew he would get him eventually as soon as the opportunity opened up for him. But I do think that the thing that we know Bivol will do, and that Kovalev showed you could do, is you could jab the hell out of him. And Bivol would be throwing lots of jabs. I don't know if that's a fight that Team Canelo will want. I think they might more likely go the Callum Smith route. But I don't know. I think I would have to lean towards Andre Ward as fighter of the decade over Canelo. But Canelo makes a solid case for it. Mayweather makes a decent case for it. But, come on.
I don't want to listen.
Ward's resume is better.
I don't want to even mention his name, and I'm not even talking decade. That's good. But Andre Ward, Andre Ward did everything that you could expect. He wasn't a household name. He was with the wrong promotional team. He won the Super Six, which was really a fantastic tournament. I wish they kept it going. The fights with Kovalev, I mean, you can make an argument that, he got a gift and won. But I don't want to see him fight anymore. I think he's doing a good job. I think they have a solid broadcast team. And Canelo, when you bring the whole package, it's like what I feel about Hall of Fame. Not only do you have to have fought some good fights and frequency of fights to win Fighter of the Year, but you had to have brought something to the sport. And I think Canelo has. Canelo's brought, he sells out. You witness it yourself. He's got a lot of fans. He does think outside the box, although it's a calculated thought process. But still, like Dak said, Rocky Fielding, Daniel Jacobs, Sergey Kovalev for 2019, not too shabby. And I do expect him to fight a quality fighter in 2020, probably May. Whether it be a Callum Smith or Dimitri Bivol or a Dre. Either way, it's going to be somebody substantial. I believe his rhetoric about that, that he wants only the best fights. As a matter of fact, I forget who he was talking to. Somebody called him out recently, and he basically just said, listen, no offense, but you're just not a big enough name for me. It's all about making money. And that's it's fact, So, what about Crawford? Who would you like to see him fight?
I would love to see Crawford fight Errol Spence. If Errol Spence is fit to fight, maybe. Yeah, it sounds, at least there's rumors that accident was a little rough than we might have been led to believe. A little rougher than we were led to believe. I do think that if there's any division that is ripe for a tournament right now, a unification tournament, it's welterweight. And it's unfortunate we have sort of the PBC. Exactly what we worried about happening with the PBC is kind of what's happening, where they don't want to talk about the other guys that are under other promoters. And and Tim Bradley went on a rant last night, a very Atlas style rant, but I think he had a good point that the only PBC fighter right now that's sort of bucking the trend and fighting, crossing the street, as the kids say today, to fight against another promoter's fighter is Deontay Wilder. He's doing it against Tyson Fury. Now, granted, that's an ESPN house fighter. So, maybe that's why they're extra, giving him extra kudos for that. But I think at welterweight, the fans deserve it because, come on. You got a guy like Crawford, and you have another guy like Spence, and we're not going to let them fight each other. That's just unfortunate. I think there's also talk. Manny Pacquiao is still in there. He was someone I thought, well, what about this decade? If you look at, in terms of fight of the decade, his best fights were not in this decade. So Manny is sort of out of the running, I think. But he's still one of the top welterweights in the world. That's something that was sort of a surprise to me, at least in 2019, that he still looks as good as he does. Maybe he fights Mikey Garcia. And then we have sort of the winner of Garcia-Pacquiao, the winner of... I don't know if maybe Ugas is in there, and then the winner gets Crawford. I don't know. I'd love to see that. I don't know if that's going to happen. I think the other thing, Bill, that we have to remember is, I don't know, in terms of for Fighter of the Year, I got to lean towards Inoue. I thought Inoue versus Donaire was one of my favorite fights of the year.
It could be Fight of the Year. Could be Fight of the Year.
I think you could argue that it was because of the skill level of both guys. I think also what you find out later is that, Inoue went the distance. Well, he had a broken eye socket from round 2. I think that another guy who had a great year, and he's always fun to watch, is Emmanuel Navarrete. I I don't know. This sport is in really good shape. Even though there is an article that I wanted to send you a link, a Russell Peltz article that really, if you're a boxing fan, you should read it because it is sort of like, wow, our sport's dying. But it's, like Larry Merchant says, you can't save boxing and you can't kill it. It's just like Dracula. That's why I love it. And we still had another good year in 2019. I mean, I think the upset of the year and the disappointment of the year was also the Buster Douglas Award of the year goes to Andy Ruiz.
Yeah. You mentioned Inoue against Nonito Donaire. Donaire deserves credit because many of us, including myself, put him on the scrap heap not too long ago, and he put in a performance of the ages against Inoue, and that was a classic youth versus age as well, so. Yeah.
But, Julian Williams had another big upset, too, when he upset Jarrett Hurd. That was another good fight.
Yeah, and Jarrett Hurd I'm disappointed in. Never tried to come back to get the rematch with Williams, and he's like, oh, I'm coming back. I can't talk about it now. I saw an interview with him. I can't talk about it now, but I'm moving up in weight. The guy could become a heavyweight. The thought that he was a junior middleweight to begin with was kind of strange, but in any event. Alex, I wish you and yours a very Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Give your brother and those nephews of yours a hello from me, and I'll be talking to you soon.
Absolutely, Billy C. Thank you so much. Thank you for another great year, and my best to you and your family. Happy New Year.
All right, brother. I'll talk to you soon.
Take care. Bye-bye.
That's my man, Alex Papali, giving us his thoughts. And like I told you guys, we're going commercial free today. Since it's our last live show of the year. Make sure you check all of the 24-hour, 7-day-a-week channel, which is available. If you had not signed, it's available on all the major streaming services. If you don't have it, make sure you get it. Yeah, or check it out. You can get all the information on Ginico. Yeah, that's it. GinicoUSA.com. So make sure you check that out. But in any event, we are experiencing some difficulty, it looks like. Let's see what's going on here. But joining us right now, I believe, is Emily Harney. Are you with us?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. All
right. Woo-hoo.
Yeah. What'd you think of the fight, man? Some great photos, by the way. But what'd you think of the Terence Crawford fight?
Thank you. I was a little worried. I feel like from my vantage point, the first maybe 5 rounds, I had a lot of images of machine, the machine landing great shots, and I felt like Terence was trying to figure him out, and I don't know if he was that awkward of a fighter for him or if there was just something off. I don't know if he got called too quick because the Comey fight went so quickly. Was he not right there? But I just felt like something was a little bit off when he came out for the 6th round. I think it was. He started really moving around, moving his head a little bit more, and that's when he really kind of started to turn it on. Now, I do think the machine started to wear down a little bit, as Terence started to figure him out. But it was an interesting fight to start, and I just wondered how he thought his performance was in that first half of the fight. And I also couldn't hear what his corner was telling him. So I'm curious if they thought the same thing.
He has a tendency to really, feel out his opponents and then just go in for the kill. And I thought he did the same thing last night. I do think that Kavaliauskas was a guy that could have been underestimated. I mean, I kept telling people this guy isn't that bad. I mean, it's just
Right.
somebody that nobody heard about. When I looked and looked at his resume, I'm saying, well, look at all the fighters he fought. He fights all the fighters that a lot of young and up-and-coming fighters avoid. And he won, and I thought that he was holding his own against Terence last night. But Terence Crawford is one of the best in the world. He's clearly a pound-for-pound fighter, top 3. I put him at number 1. I'd flip-flop him and Lomachenko and Canelo. You could put him insert them in any one of those top 3 spots, or have them all tie. And I'm not going to argue with you. But I thought that Crawford did what he does, and it's just a shame to hear fans blame him for not fighting other fighters when I don't think he would turn down any fight, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, I don't think he would either. And that's the thing. I do think there was an underestimation in his opponent, and I think that happens often when people don't hear a name, and it's easy to do research these days, and it's easy to look at who people fight and who those people are and who they've fought, and you're able to, figure out if this person has kind of taken a cakewalk or not. And you're right, this guy hasn't taken a cakewalk. I don't think he ducks anybody. I think a lot of times, and I think we know a lot of times, that people don't see this as a business. We have to look at the longevity of a fighter. And it's not like he's taken easy fights. He is fighting lucrative individuals, people who have an actual opportunity here to make something, themselves. And I think the fans get frustrated because they want to see those big fights right away, or, he's just ducking them, and this is being offered. They don't always know what's really on the table, and if that really is on the table, sometimes it's just somebody saying, hey, we want this fight to happen. And somebody making a fake poster to say, hey, it is happening,
You're right. Okay, from your vantage point, was it a legitimate knockdown in the 3rd round when Kavaliauskas caught Crawford? Crawford says he was never hurt. It wasn't a knockdown. I'm hearing split opinions. You were there. Tell me.
Yeah, I thought he was actually knocked down, and when I went back and looked at the shots, and I'd have to go back and look at video too to see if I was right, I thought he got hit and then fell. I didn't think he, got hit seconds before that, moved, and then fell. I really thought he fell, and I talked to somebody later on in the night, and they thought the same thing. That wasn't a slip, so I think sometimes, the ref sees it a way that, doesn't see the whole thing. I don't know, where it happened so fast, but yeah, I thought it was a definite punch.
He said he wasn't hurt, and
no, I don't think he was hurt.
I don't either.
I just think he went down,
Yeah, I don't think he was hurt either, and I'm usually very critical of the referees generally in New York-based fights, but I thought that the 3 fights that are released televised were all refereed pretty well. I don't have any arguments. I mean, to be honest with you, in all 3 of those fights, the referee was out of the picture frame for most of the fight, which I love. I can't stand it when they're thinking they're that Willis guy with the facial stuff. I mean, jeez. Teofimo Lopez destroyed Richard Comey last night. I love this kid. But, it's a bittersweet fight, kind of, because now it seemingly set up a fight with Vasily Lomachenko. Do you think he's got a chance against Lomachenko?
I kind of wonder if he just got Comey on a bad night, or in the right spot. I would like to see if we could see that again and if it goes a different way. I don't know, and did Comey kind of, feel himself a little too high on this fight, and just, there's things there that I think if he fights Lomachenko, he's going to be in a lot of trouble. Can I see that fight a little ways down the line after a few more fights for him? Yeah, but I don't know. I mean, obviously that's a big fight for him, and that's who you want. You want the big fights, but is that the smartest fight right now? I don't.
I don't know. I mean, for him, I don't know if it is. For Lomachenko, it is. But I think you're right about Comey because I never saw him smile so much in my life. It was like he was like a Madison Square Garden, ESPN. I mean, you're right. It seemed like he was absorbing the moment and then absorbed the shot that he just never recovered from. But
I'd like to see another opportunity given to him to see if we get a different result or just a better fight. A great knockout. I don't take away from that, but a longer, more competitive. Like, let's see if we can go toe to toe here, because I do think Comey's got it in him.
Emily, we've been talking about fights that you'd like to see in 2020. Is there one that stands out for you that you would feel has to be made?
I'd actually like to see Tyson Fury and Joshua fight. Just thinking about the styles of these guys, and obviously we want to see Wilder fight Joshua, or some of us do maybe. But I think I'd really like to see him and Tyson Fury go at it, because I think in terms of what both of them bring to the ring, in terms of what comes next, and the respect for each other, and the skill too. I feel like that's a great fight before we even see Wilder, fight Joshua, if that's what happens. I know we got Tyson and Wilder coming up in the beginning of the year, but that's something I would like to see.
I'm with you. I like the matchup between Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua. I think it would be a huge fight for boxing, not only in the U.S. and for the heavyweight division, but it would probably be the biggest event ever in the sport of boxing in England. I agree with you. As far as fighter of the year, who would you pick?
Ooh, fighter of the year. That's a tough one.
It is.
Man, you're gonna put me on the spot on.
Well, they all put me. Listen, they put me on the spot because I came into the show today. It's our last show of 2019, and Dax says, "So who's your fighter of the year?" I'm like, I didn't even think of any, But I started thinking. And, you can make the argument with Inoue being one. His fight against Nonito Donaire was classic. But I'm leaning towards Canelo. And I look at Canelo and I say, he did beat Rocky Fielding. He did beat Daniel Jacobs, so he goes up to super middleweight. He goes back to middleweight. And then that fight against Kovalev, people say, Kovalev was shot. Rocky Fielding was nothing. But you know what? Canelo also brings something to the sport, and I think people have to weigh that in when they pick. Mine is Canelo. Did I lose you?
Oh, I'm back.
Oh, hey, so, I think Canelo for me.
Yeah, I can understand that for sure. Based on everything that he did this year. He definitely is somebody to give credit to. And he's really the one that was the most active out of everybody. He really did a lot between this point last year, where a lot of times we've already decided who the fighter of the year is, into November. And being able to go up a weight class, and move around in that way is a big deal, and to be able to dominate in that way. You hear guys all moving up because they can't make the weight anymore, and they find themselves a fish out of water. He really was able to, stabilize himself there. So, I think he's a good case for it. I guess that's who you got to kind of look at right now. I feel like when I look at it, he is the most consistent fighter out of the pound for pounds this year.
It's true. Before I let you go, I want to ask you your opinion. Okay, the fight, you mentioned it earlier, and the fight's going to be happen early 2020. It's the rematch between Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury. How do you see that fight going, Em? And what's your official prediction?
I really want to go Tyson Fury on this. I feel like he's had a lot of time to mentally get himself into a space. Not that he hasn't been, but, you know, Wilder sometimes I feel like can be all over the place. And sometimes he's looking for that one-hit wonder. And I feel like Tyson is, you know, obviously hip to that whole thing. But I feel like he does, in a way, hold the upper hand here. I feel like there's a lot more pressure right now on Wilder than there is Fury. And, you know, for a variety of reasons, I think people like Fury more, and because he stands for a lot more valuable things, and not just in our country, all over the place. And I think Wilder sometimes rubs people the wrong way. So I'm hoping that Tyson Fury can take him to court. So I'm going Fury.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I'm with you.
It's not going to be a no, it's going to be a decision, you know. It's going to have to be. I don't see him stopping him.
You see, now, I look at it this way. Deontay Wilder, I don't think he possesses – he's not a talented fighter. The only thing he possesses is that power. And that power is second to none. And it's carried him for all of his fights. And so far, that's all he's needed. And chances are he's going to continue to rely on it. And – you know, it is what it is, and people. He's exciting because people watch him for that knockout. With that said, I think if he goes in for the kill, which I think he will, I think that Deontay's going to go in for the quicker knockout against Fury this time. But that fights right into Fury's hands because Fury is going to expect that too. I just think that if Deontay has any other skill, the rematch with Tyson Fury should be the time he shows it. He needs to jab. He needs to confuse, not so much confuse Fury because you're not, but mix it up. Have Fury go to a plan B. Fury didn't have to change his game plan in the first fight. And if it picks up where it left off, he won't have to change it in the second. It's an interesting fight. I'd like to pick Fury, but I have a feeling Deontay's going to catch up with him, you know. But we'll see. We'll see. But anyway, Emily, I appreciate you joining us. I want to wish you and your family a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And we'll be looking forward to you. We'll be back right after New Year's, and you'll be back too. So we hope that we have a lot to talk about then.
Great. Thank you very much. Happy New Year. Merry Christmas to you and everybody out there. I can't wait to talk to you in 2020.
It's not going to be that far away, you know. It's only a couple of weeks. Makes it seem like it's, way far away. See you in 2020. You know, it's like 2 weeks we'll be back. So, anyway, Emily, you have a great one.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Take care. That's Emily Harney, the best photographer in boxing. All the good shots out on the Terence Crawford fight last night. You'll see that the photos were taken by our very own Emily Harney. I got some emails to read. This one's from my man Matt from Buffalo. He says, hey, Billy C., instead of the clash at the dunes, they should have called this the fart in the desert wind. From the Andy Ruiz, Buster Douglas impression to post-PED test Dillian White dancing, boxing fans were not in for a very scandalizing treat, but rather a message akin to Overeat is Anonymous. I'm hard-pressed to think that the Saudis appreciated paying $100 million for this display. I suppose none of us can complain about chalking up $80 amongst friends for a pay-per-view in the future, although Anthony Joshua won a fight with polish from the outside. This type of bout is liable to put fans to sleep faster than a swing of NyQuil and a shot of Jack Daniels combination. NyQuil, I'm afraid to even take it. I had a bad experience from it. I took it once and never do it again. Anyway, he says, at this rate, in the matchroom stable, my tender paunch beer belly may warrant a title fight. All kidding aside, I was disappointed with the fight. My only question for you is this, Billy C. What is Joshua's game plan for 2020 after the recent scares? Is it back to Matchroom Secret Service protection, or will AJ fight a man with a body mass index of under 20 with a top 10 Ring magazine rating? First of all, I agree that the fight wasn't super exciting, but, you know, Anthony Joshua did what Anthony Joshua had to do. And, I admire him for going back and changing his approach to the sport. You're going to see Anthony Joshua fight Pulov next, and then you're going to see Anthony Joshua fight Usyk, and then I have a feeling he's going to fight Tyson Fury. I think Tyson Fury against Anthony Joshua in England, regardless of wins and losses by either fighter to that point, will be the biggest fight in the history of Great Britain. So I am looking forward to that. But I get it 100%. Don't forget me about fishing, Matt, either. Thanks for the email. My man Augie from Riverhead, Long Island, left me a voicemail. He says, Billy C., what's the story with Errol Spence? Nobody's saying anything. He's got another comment here. I said, from what I hear, Og, is that Errol Spence is hurt more than we think from that accident. I've heard rumors that it's his leg, and I've heard rumors that it's his hand. I did look at some photos where his hand was kind of weird. It didn't look right. But I would not be shocked if we don't see him again. And if we do see him again, I think we're all going to notice a big difference in Errol Spence. So I do think that accident caused more damage to Errol Spence than initially anticipated. His second point was, why is Crawford not fighting better opposition? Hopefully, Og, you listened to the beginning of the show. He is fighting the best opposition. He can only fight the fighters that are willing to step in the ring with him. I was looking at the top fighters in the welterweight division. Errol Spence, we don't know what's going on with him. He's probably going to be a champion in recess should he not be able to fight. The WBA has got 100 different world titleists: Manny Pacquiao, Alexander Vesputin, and Virgil Ortiz Jr., all champions in that division. He fought his mandatory in Kavaliauskas last night, and Kavaliauskas was a much better fighter than people thought. It's just the unknown factor. If you don't follow the sport and you don't know. But when I broke down that fight, and I said it earlier, the level of competition that Mean Machine Kavaliauskas fought is seemingly the fighters that everyone else avoids. So I'm not going to be too hard on Crawford. Let's see where he goes in 2020. My man Gavin, a.k.a. The Frog, he used to listen all the time. He left me, the guys are leaving me voicemails, audio prints and stuff. It's pretty fun to get this stuff. But Gavin said, after watching Anthony Joshua Ruiz rematch, it doesn't take a super trainer to figure out that a jab beats Ruiz. He said, just look at the Parker fight. I agree with Gavin 100%. And, in one of these comments that, AJ should get rid of that trainer, he should add someone else. Obviously, they have a unique relationship. They've been together so long. But that is the way to beat Andy Ruiz. And the Parker fight's another example. So that's a great point that Gavin made. He said the other point is Fury will not last with Wilder in the rematch. I'm hoping you're wrong about that, Gavin. But I have a strange feeling as well. And he says a unification fight, he says, unfortunately, Wilder's going to catch up with AJ by the 7th or 8th round and knock him out. He says Anthony Joshua has no chin. I want to disagree with Gavin, but, right now, Deontay Wilder's power has been overriding his lack of boxing ability. It's all he's needed. That's what he's reverts to until somebody can hurt him and beat him up. He's going to still go to it. He's going to go to it until it fails him. And so far, it has not failed him, except for the Fury fight. And, what failed, it didn't fail Deontay. It failed us, the boxing fan, and that was the three judges at ringside. And finally, actually, I got a couple more here. This one is from my man. Who's this one from? This is not from anyone. This is from myself to the staff. We will be back. This is me to remind you guys. Okay, we'll be back on January 5th live, so don't miss that. Anyway, my last email, this one's from my man James. He says, Billy C., I'm not ashamed to say that I recently flirted with dropping boxing as my hobby. Between a gluttony of titles and the Tyson Fury WWE nonsense, I felt like professional boxing was turning into a joke. Then I saw the fight last night, the Crawford fight, and it gives me a bit of hope for the sport. We had a good, hard-fought fight where both men won rounds, yet since it ended in a knockout, there'll be no BS with wonky judging. That's what boxing should be. What do you think, Billy C.? Are we going to see more fights like this in 2020, or am I just getting my hopes up? I think we are. I think boxing is doing real well. Like I said, the four major promoters, Golden Boy, Top Rank, and of course Matchroom, they're all fighting each other. And that's what's creating these great fights. Then the other promoter in the mix is PBC. They're not. They're continuing the division of the sport, and they're going to eventually fall flat on the face because they're trying to create a boxing version of the UFC. It's worked to a degree. It's created a new group of fans that really don't know the sport. I look at the Charlo brothers as a great example. They look the part. They're always in good shape, but they're not that talented. Those are like their two top guys besides Deontay Wilder. And Deontay Wilder is a one-trick pony. Granted, that one trick has put him in a great position. But, I riddle me this, boys and girls. AJ got $40 million for the fight against Andy Ruiz, minimum. $40 million. Deontay Wilder has not made $40 million in his entire career. Boxing, yes, it's the sport that we love to see two guys go at it and the best man wins. But at the end of the day, for the fighters that bust their butts training and give up all these things, you're looking at fights that are going to be the end of this year, next week, and the 28th, the Gamboa and Davis fight. These are guys that are, giving up their holidays for the sport. At some point in time, it's got to be about the do-re-mi. It's got to be about the money. And the truth of the matter is that Deontay Wilder has left millions and millions of dollars on the table by not fighting Anthony Joshua and some of the other fighters that he could be fighting for more money than the level of opposition that he is fighting. Now, granted, Tyson Fury is going to make some decent money, but he only made $5 million in the last fight. Tyson Fury made more than him. I think he made 11. If my numbers, if my memory serves me well. So I think, the one thing I love about Deontay Wilder is his loyalty. He's extremely loyal to his team. He needs to change his team. His team is screwing him. Deontay Wilder needs to start making some big paydays. He's got an opportunity to fight Anthony Joshua for a humongous amount of money. Should he get by Tyson Fury? I'm sure he's going to make double-digit millions for Tyson Fury rematch. We'll see. But in any event, that's my thoughts on that. Listen, boys and girls, we had a great 2019, and we're looking forward to 2020. We're looking forward to boxing keeping going the way it is. We'll be entering our 16th year. Don't forget about our channel. Go back and catch up on some stuff. If you're watching on TV, go back and check this stuff out. You can always get all of our replays on YouTube. Don't forget about our podcast. You can sign up for that. And, of course, our 24/7 TV channel. I want to thank all the radio affiliates out there that broadcast our show, whether they're broadcasting on a daily or weekly basis. And special shout-out to my fellow Jet fan, George Russell of WSMN. We love being part of the sports programming on WSMN, and I appreciate it from George. And I want to wish all of you happy holidays. I don't want to leave anything out, and a very happy New Year to everyone. And I hope you all come back and join us when we're live again Sunday morning on January 5th. I believe that's the day. Yes, Sunday, January 5th, we'll be back live. So until then, I'll leave you with this. Make sure you tune in Sunday morning, January 5th. Don't be late. I'll be here. Same bat time, same bat channel. Until then, ciao, baby. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.